Was sitting in that hard plastic chair at the Chicago police precinct, my arm still throbbing beneath my long-sleeved blouse when I heard his voice echoing down the hall. Ethan, my husband, the father of my daughters, the man I had loved for 18 years. And his voice was calm, charming, even chatting with someone at the front desk as if he were closing a business deal. My stomach churned. He had followed me. I clutched my purse to my chest and felt my phone vibrate inside. It was probably him again. The 10th, 20th text since I'd left the house, but this time, I wasn't going to answer. This time I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. He knew it. That's why he was here. The door to the small room opened, and a police officer with her hair pulled into a tight bun walked in. Her uniform was impeccable, her eyes weary, the look of someone who had seen this scene 1,000 times. She sat down across from me, turned on the computer, and sighed before asking for my full name. "Sarah Miller," I said. My voice came out thin, almost a whisper. 42 years old, dentist, married, 2 daughters. She typed slowly, the clatter of the keys seeming too loud in the small room that smelled of stale coffee and paper. I looked down at my hands. My nails were perfectly manicured, polished in a neutral nude. The nails of a woman who has time, money, an organized life. Nails that didn't match the dark purple bruise spreading beneath the sleeve of my blouse. "What are you here to report today, Sarah?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. The words were stuck in my throat, thick and dry. To say it out loud to a stranger in a police station meant admitting it, making it real. It meant I was no longer the Sarah with the nice practice in Lincoln Park. The Sarah who posted pictures of family dinners on Instagram. The Sarah with a nearly 20-year marriage and a condo overlooking the park. "My husband assaulted me," I said. And this time it was in front of my daughters. Silence. She stopped typing and looked at me, not with pity but with something worse, recognition. As if I were just another one. And maybe I was. "Can you show me?" she asked. I pushed up my sleeve. The bruise was worse than it had been this morning. It looked like an abstract painting, shades of deep purple, dark blue with greenish yellow at the edges. The mark of his fingers was so clear you could count them. 4 fingers, the thumb on the other side. He had gripped me with such force while yelling inches from my face that I was ungrateful, hysterical, that he worked like a dog to support our home, and I didn't recognize it, didn't value it, didn't deserve it. He said I didn't deserve anything I had, that without him I was nothing. He said it looking me right in the eye, right in my eyes. Then he squeezed my arm until I screamed. And when I screamed, Emily and Sophie appeared at the bedroom door. My girls saw everything. My voice cracked. "Don't cry, Sarah. Not here, not now." I had rehearsed this the entire drive over. I had promised myself I would be strong, objective, firm. But when you say it out loud, when you let out what you've been holding in for months, for years, it all falls apart. And I fell apart right there in that plastic chair while the officer took a tissue from the box on her desk and handed it to me without a word. "I'll get the detective," she said, standing up. "He needs to hear this." "No," I said, quickly grabbing her arm. "He's out there. My husband. He followed me. I saw his car parked out front." She frowned. "Do you have a restraining order?" "Not yet. I just came to file a report. I need proof to file for divorce. I need it on record that he hit me, that he's aggressive because he'll try to use the girl's custody against me. He always does. That always makes me look like the crazy one." She nodded, and I could see she knew this script by heart. How many women had sat in this very chair? How many had told the same story with different words? "Wait here," she said and left. I was alone in the room. The old air conditioner hummed like a failing refrigerator motor. I could hear muffled voices outside, footsteps, a phone ringing. And then I heard Ethan's voice again, louder, this time impatient. He was asking if he could speak to me, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that we were a married couple, that this was a family matter. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, the smell of old coffee mixed with pine sol. I tasted the metallic tang of fear in my mouth, but beneath the fear there was something else, anger. A quiet, cold rage that I had been nursing for months, ever since the day he screamed at me in front of Emily, since the time he accidentally pushed Sophie when she tried to defend me. Since the night I found the text message on his phone and he turned it around, accusing me of being paranoid, of invading his privacy. I had waited too long, endured too much, believed for too long that he would change, that it was just a rough patch, that the Ethan I first met would come back. But that Ethan never existed. Or maybe he only existed long enough for me to marry him, get pregnant, and intertwine my life with his in a way that felt impossible to undo. But I had a secret, a trump card he couldn't imagine. The door opened again, A man in his early 50s walked in. A well-trimmed graying beard, the rumpled suit of a detective. He had a manila folder under his arm and a serious expression that wasn't exactly hard but wasn't kind either. It was professional tired, like someone who had seen the worst of humanity and still showed up for work every day. "Sarah Miller," he asked, sitting in the chair the officer had vacated. "I'm Detective Evans." The officer filled me in. "Physical assault, correct." I nodded. He opened the folder, took out a pen. "Can you tell me what happened?" And I told him. From the beginning. From the stupid argument about the dishes he'd left in the sink for the 1,000th time. From the moment I said I was tired, that I worked just as hard as he did, that I deserved a break too. From the moment he slowly stood up from his chair that way he does when he's losing control and walked toward me. "He grabbed me here," I said, showing him my arm again, and screamed that I was worthless, that if it weren't for him, I'd just be another dentist in some neighborhood clinic. That the money that built my practice was a loan from his construction company, that he could take everything away from me. The detective stopped writing, looked at me. "He said he could take everything from you. He always says that. That I depend on him, that without him I'm nothing." "And the clinic, whose name is it in?" "Mine. I bought the property with the inheritance from my mother." "He knows that, but he likes to twist things, you know. Makes it seem like everything I have is because of him." The detective stared at me for a few seconds. Then he asked, "What is your husband's full name?" "Ethan Hayes, 45. Civil engineer partner at that big construction firm here in Chicago, Hayes Construction." My heart skipped a beat. "Yes, how did you know?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, went to a metal filing cabinet in the corner of the room, opened a drawer, and started searching for something. The sound of rustling folders was deafening. I felt my mouth go dry. "Sarah," he said, his back still to me as he pulled out a thick folder. "I know this man." He turned, walked back to the table, and placed the folder in front of me. His name was written on the tab, but it wasn't the only thing there. There were other names, 3 women's names I had never seen before. The detective opened the folder slowly, like someone opening a box they know has a snake inside. And then I saw them. Police reports. 3 of them, all against Ethan Hayes. All for assault. All dropped, because the women declined to press charges. The floor fell out from under me. This is real." The detective nodded. "Your husband has been reported for domestic violence 3 times. Cases from before your marriage. 2 girlfriends and a fiancé. They all withdrew the complaint. I remember him because I was a patrolman back then, and one of these women almost died. He broke 2 of her ribs, but his family showed up, offered money, and she backed down. I couldn't breathe. 3 women. 3 before me. And he had never ever mentioned it, never admitted he had a history. I had married a serial abuser. I had put my daughters in a home with a man who had nearly killed someone." "Sarah," the detective said, and his voice was lower now, almost gentle. "You're not the first. And if you don't do something now, you probably won't be the last." The tears came hot and fast. I didn't want to cry, but it was impossible to hold back. Because for all these years I had thought the problem was me. That I provoked him, that I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too demanding. He had convinced me of it. He had made me believe that no other man would put up with me, that I was lucky to have him. But it wasn't true. None of it was true. I was just another one on his list. Another woman he had chosen to slowly destroy. Can you help me?" I asked. "I can. And I will. But I need you to help me too. I need you not to give up. I need you to see this through. Because this time, Sarah, this time I'm going to make this man answer for what he's done." I nodded, wiped the tears with the back of my hand, and then I reached for my purse, opened it, and took out my phone. I unlocked it and showed him the folder I had created 8 months ago, the folder named Evidence. Inside were 47 audio files of arguments, 23 photos of bruises, 6 videos of him breaking things in the house, and 2-minute recording of him threatening to kill me if I ever tried to leave him. The detective took the phone, looked at the screen, then looked at me. And for the first time since I'd walked into that precinct, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't exhaustion. It was respect. "You're smart," he said. "No," I answered. "I'm just tired of being stupid." And there, in that cold precinct room while outside, my husband waited to convince me to give up one more time. I twisted the gold wedding band off my finger, the one engraved with forever inside, and placed it on the scratched metal table. Right in the middle of the folder, with the reports from the other women he had destroyed before me. Forever was over, and my real fight was just beginning. To understand how I ended up in that precinct with 8 months of evidence stored on my phone, I need to take you back. back 18 years to when I met Ethan Hayes at a graduation party for the UIC College of Dentistry. I was 24, a brand new graduate, wearing a blue dress. My mom had given me heels that pinched but looked beautiful, my hair loose down my back. I felt pretty powerful, ready to conquer the world. I had spent 5 years studying like a maniac, doing rotations in public health clinics, waking up at 5 a.m. to catch the L. My mom had sold her condo to help me pay for school after my dad died. I owed her everything, and that night, diploma in hand, I was sure I would pay back every cent, every sacrifice, every night she spent doing alterations to supplement her pension. It was my friend Daniel, a classmate, who introduced me to Ethan. He was someone's cousin, just there to meet new people. A civil engineer, also a recent graduate, already working at his father's construction firm. Handsome in that classic way, you know? Light eyes, a broad smile, the confident air of someone who grew up never having to prove anything to anyone. He wore a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, an expensive watch on his wrist. He smelled of designer cologne. He looked at me as if I were the only person at the party. He asked me about dentistry, about my plans, about what I wanted to do. And he listened, or at least I thought he listened. He asked the right questions, laughed at my jokes, touched my arm when he spoke. By the end of the night, he asked for my number. 3 days later, he called and invited me to dinner. The restaurant was too fancy for me. I remember being nervous looking at the menu without prices, trying to guess what was cheapest. But he ordered wine, an appetizer, a main course dessert. He paid without blinking, made me feel special, made me feel like I deserved it. For the first 6 months, Ethan was perfect. He picked me up, brought flowers for my mom, introduced me to his parents, elegant people who lived in a triplex penthouse in the Gold Coast overlooking Lincoln Park. His mother Eleanor looked me up and down at that first brunch, sizing me up to see if I was good enough for her son. But she smiled, said I was a hardworking girl, and I swallowed the poison in that compliment, pretending it was sweet. Ethan helped me set up my first practice. Or at least that's what he said. The truth is, my mom passed away 6 months after my graduation. Breast cancer, fast, aggressive, no chance. She left me a small condo in Andersonville, which I sold for $400,000. I used every penny of that money to buy a commercial space in Lincoln Park and equip the clinic. Every chair, every autoclave, every light was paid for with my mother's sweat. But Ethan was always there, giving his opinion, knowing suppliers, negotiating prices. And over time, he started to twist the narrative. He would tell his friends he helped set up my clinic, that he loaned me money, that he used his contacts. And I let him because at the time I thought it was love. I thought he was supporting me. We got married 2 years after we met. A big wedding at a prestigious club, 300 guests, an imported dress his mother chose because the one I picked wasn't up to standard. A honeymoon in Hawaii. We came back and moved into a condo he had bought in his name. I suggested putting both our names on the deed since I'd be helping with the mortgage, but he laughed and said it wasn't necessary that we were married, what was his was mine. I believed him. Emily was born a year later, Sophie, 2 years after that. And that's when things started to change. Slowly, so slowly, I didn't even notice. First, it was the comments. I was too tired, I complained too much, I didn't keep the house well enough. He worked all day and came home expecting everything to be in order, but there were toys scattered about, dishes in the sink, me in pajamas stained with baby food. I would apologize, try to do better. I hired a cleaning service, but then he complained about the money. Said I spent too much, that I didn't know how to manage finances, even though I paid for the cleaner with money from my clinic. But he always found a way to make it sound like it was his money. Then came the yelling. He'd come home stressed from work, and anything was a reason to explode. Sophie crying, Emily asking for attention, me asking if he could help with bath time. It all became a reason for him to scream. And he screamed, loudly screamed horrible things, that I was incompetent, that he regretted marrying me, that I had trapped him with children, that if it weren't for the girls he would have left long ago. I would cry, hidden in the bathroom, hug my daughters, and apologize to them for what they heard. I'd try to explain that Daddy was just tired, just stressed, that deep down he loved us, and I believed it. I believed that if I were a better wife, a better mother, a better homemaker, he would go back to being that man from the graduation party, the one who looked at me like I was special. But he never came back because that man never really existed. It was just a mask. The years passed. Emily grew into a quiet girl who avoided her father. Sophie became an anxious child who bit her nails and was afraid of the dark. And I became a shadow. I worked at the clinic during the day, smiled at patients, pretended everything was fine. I came home and walked on eggshells, measuring every word, every gesture, trying not to trigger an explosion. Ethan started controlling the money. I made a good living at the clinic, but he insisted I deposit everything into a joint account. He said it was to make things easier so we could manage it together, but he was the one in control. He decided what was an essential expense and what was a frivolous want of mine. He had the online banking password. I'd ask to buy clothes for the girls and have to justify every cent, but he would buy a $5,000 watch and say it was an investment. There was a time I tried to fight back. I said I wanted my own separate account, my own money. He gave me the silent treatment for a week. Ignored me when I walked into a room. Turned his head when I tried to talk. The girls noticed and were terrified. In the end, I gave in. I apologized, said I was being silly, and we went back to his routine. Then the shove started. Nothing that left a mark just when we argued and I got too close. He would push me away forcefully or grip my wrist tightly when I tried to leave the room during a fight. The first time he really pushed me was 3 years ago. I fell backward onto the sofa, hit my head on the armrest, saw stars. He slammed the door on his way out, came back 2 hours later with flowers and an apology. Said he'd lost control, was under pressure at work, it would never happen again. It happened again and again and again. And I started accepting it, normalizing it, believing that maybe I did provoke him, that maybe I was too dramatic. He said it so often that I started to doubt myself. Was I exaggerating? Were all marriages like this? Was I too weak to handle a real man? But then one day, everything changed. It was 8 months ago. Emily was in her room doing homework. Sophie was watching TV in the living room. I was in the kitchen making dinner when Ethan came home. He'd been drinking not a lot, but enough to be looser, crueler. He started complaining about the food before I even served it. Said he was sick of pasta, that he paid the bills and deserved better. I took a deep breath. I said if he wanted something different, he could cook too, that I worked just as much as he did and I was tired. It was the wrong thing to say. He threw his plate into the sink. It shattered. Shards of ceramic flew. One cut my hand. I cried out, and he came at me, his face red, his finger in my face, screaming that I was an ungrateful bitch, that without him I was nothing, that he could leave me on the street with the girls without a penny. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway. I will never forget her face. The fear in her eyes, the disappointment, the look that said, "Mom, why do you let him do this?" And in that moment, I decided, not in that exact second, because I was still too terrified. But that night, lying in bed next to him while he slept as if nothing had happened, I decided I was leaving. But not just anyway, not without protection, not without proof, because I knew Ethan. I knew his way of twisting the truth, of making me look crazy, of turning everyone against me. If I simply asked for a divorce, he would use his money, his lawyers, his contacts to destroy me. He would try to get custody of the girls, say I was unstable, negligent, that I abandoned the family. So I started recording. Every time he started yelling, I turned on my phone's voice recorder and left it in my apron pocket in my purse on the table. I recorded 47 arguments. 47 times he called me incompetent, stupid, useless, a bitch, a whore. 47 times he said he would leave me on the street, take my daughters from me, destroy me. I started photographing every mark, every bruise, every scratch. Every time he grabbed my arm too hard, squeezed my wrist, pushed my head. 23 photos over 8 months. I filmed him breaking things 6 times, plates, glasses, the remote control, the cabinet door. Things he would later claim I had broken, that I had provoked him, that it was my fault. And then there's the 1-2-minute recording. The worst one. The one I secretly recorded 3 weeks ago when I mentioned the word divorce for the first time. I had only said that maybe it would be better for us, that we weren't happy that the girls were suffering. He locked the bedroom door, got in my face, and said in that low, cold voice that was worse than the yelling, "If you ever try to leave me, Sarah, I will end you. I will take your daughters from you. I will shut down your clinic. I will tell everyone that you're crazy, that you cheated on me, that you're worthless. And if that's not enough, I will kill you. Do you hear me? I will kill you, and no one will ever know." I recorded every word and saved it in a password-protected folder. I called my friend Jessica, a lawyer I'd known since college, who was now a top specialist in family law and domestic violence. I told her everything, showed her the evidence. She laid out a strategy. She said I needed to go to the police, file a report that with this evidence, she could get a protective order custody of the girls and a fair share of the assets. But I was afraid. Afraid he would find out, afraid he would follow through on his threat, afraid of losing my daughters. Until the push in front of them 2 days ago. The push that left the purple mark. The push that Emily saw and started to cry. The push that won 3-year-old Sophie secretly filmed on her phone because my daughter already knew we needed proof. That's when I knew. It was now or never. I took the girls, dropped them off at my sister's house. She had always been suspicious of Ethan. I told them I had to take care of something and drove straight to the precinct. And now, sitting in that room, looking at the reports from the other women, I understood everything. Ethan hadn't chosen me by chance. He had a pattern. Women he could control, women who depended on him in some way, women he could slowly destroy until they didn't know who they were anymore. But he had made one mistake with me. Because underneath it all, under the fear and insecurity he had planted in me, there was still the Sarah who had put herself through school, the Sarah who had built a clinic from scratch, the Sarah who had inherited the strength of a mother, who sold her home to pay for her daughter's education. And that Sarah was not going to give up. Detective Evans closed the folder and looked me in the eyes. "Are you ready to see this through to the end?" he asked. "I am," I said, and this time my voice didn't waver. Detective Evans spent the next 2 hours listening to every audio file, looking at every photo, watching every video I had saved on my phone. He took notes, paused, rewound, took more notes. The officer who had first spoken to me came in and out several times, bringing water, coffee forms. I drank the coffee even though it was cold and awful, just to have something to do with my hands, which wouldn't stop shaking. Outside, Ethan was still waiting. I could feel his presence as if it were a shadow passing through the wall. Every half hour he'd ask how much longer it would take. He'd say he had a meeting, that it was absurd to keep me here so long, that he knew important people, that he was going to call the family lawyer. "Let him call," the detective said, without taking his eyes off the computer screen where he was transferring my files. "He's going to need a very good lawyer." When he finished documenting everything, he picked up the phone and made a call. "Judge Vance, Detective Evans from the 18th District. Sorry to bother you after hours, but I have an urgent case here. I need an emergency protective order. Imminent risk. The abuser is here at the station right now, waiting for the victim. He has a history of 3 prior reports that were dropped. This time the victim has recorded evidence. 47 audio files, 23 photos of injuries, 6 videos of property damage, and a direct recorded death threat." There was a pause while he listened. Then, "Yes, ma'am. I'm emailing everything to you now. Thank you." He hung up and looked at me. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Someplace he doesn't know about?" "My sister's. He knows where she lives, but he's never been there. He doesn't get along with my family." "Good. You'll go there now. The judge will sign the protective order tonight. By tomorrow morning, he won't be able to come within 500 feet of you or your daughters. He can't call, text, nothing. If he violates it, he's arrested on the spot." "What about the condo?" I asked. "My things, the girls' things. Tomorrow morning, you'll go back with a police escort and get what you need. We'll deal with the rest later." The rest. The $2.5 million condo, the furniture I had chosen, the clothes, the books, the girls' toys, the framed family photos that were now just framed lies. The entire life I had built that I would now have to dismantle piece by piece. "I have my clinic," I said. "I own the building. There's a small apartment upstairs I use to rest between appointments. We can stay there while I sort things out." "Even better. Does it have an alarm?" "Cameras. I had them installed last month." The detective smiled for the first time. "You really prepared for this." "I had 8 months to plan." He stood up. "I'm going to bring him in here. I'm going to notify him about the police report and the incoming protective order. He's going to freak out. He'll deny everything. He'll try to convince me you're crazy. I've seen this movie 1,000 times. Do you want to be here, or would you prefer to leave through the back?" "I want to be here." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Because I needed to see it. I needed to see his face when he found out that this time I wasn't backing down. That this time I had been smarter. That he had underestimated the woman he called stupid, incompetent, useless." The detective left. I heard his voice in the hallway calling Ethan's name. I heard his footsteps approaching. My heart was beating so hard I thought I might faint, but I took a deep breath, clasped my hands in my lap, and kept my back straight. The door opened. Ethan walked in, and when he saw me sitting there with the detective beside me and the evidence folder on the table, his expression changed. For a fraction of a second, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. But he quickly put the mask back on. The weary smile, the condescending gaze, the sigh of a patient man dealing with a hysterical woman. "Sarah, honey," he said, his voice as smooth as poisoned honey. "What's going on? Why aren't you answering my calls? I was worried." "The girls are asking for you." "Don't talk about my daughters," I said. My voice came out steady, steadier than I expected. He blinked. What do you mean, your daughters? There are daughters, Sarah. He looked at the detective. Detective, I don't know what my wife has told you, but she's been very stressed lately, very anxious. I even suggested she see a therapist, but she refused. She has these episodes. Sometimes she invents things, twists situations. I invent things, I said, and I felt the hot rage rise in my throat. Did I invent the 47 audio files of you screaming insults at me? Did I invent the 23 photos of the bruises you left on my body? Did I invent the videos of you smashing dishes and the remote control? Did I invent your voice threatening to kill me if I filed for divorce? His face went white. You recorded me. I recorded everything. For 8 months. Every scream, every threat, every act of violence. And now the detective has a copy of it all. Ethan looked at the detective. She can't do that. That's an invasion of privacy. It's illegal. The detective crossed his arms. Actually, Mr. Hayes, she can. In Illinois, it's legal to record a conversation you are a part of. And believe me, I've listened to it. Every second. Including the part where you say you're going to kill her. That's called a death threat. And combined with the physical assault, the 23 photographic exhibits, the videos of property damage, and the history of 3 prior reports you have at this department, I'd say you're in a very difficult situation. Ethan took a step back. What history? What 3 reports? The detective opened the old folder. Recognize these names. Jessica Smith report in 2006 dropped. Megan Jones report in 2008 dropped. Ashley Williams report in 2010. 2 broken ribs. She almost died. Report dropped after your family offered a financial settlement. Should I continue? That was years ago, Ethan stammered. I was young. I've changed. You haven't changed, the detective cut him off. You just got more careful. But this time, Mr. Hayes, your victim was more careful too. Ethan looked at me and I saw something I'd never seen before. Real desperation. He was realizing he had lost control, that the narrative was no longer his, that I had turned the tables. Sarah, he said, his voice trembling. Sarah, honey, we can talk about this at home. Calmly. I know I've been difficult. I know I lose my temper sometimes, but I love you. I love our girls. We can fix this. We don't need to involve the police. Think about the girls. Think about the scandal. My parents, my partners, everyone will know. You should have thought about that before you laid a hand on me, I said. He took another step toward me. Sarah. The detective stood up. Mr. Hayes, I suggest you don't approach the victim. I've just received confirmation from the judge. The protective order has been granted. You are prohibited from approaching Sarah Miller or her daughters within 500 feet. You cannot call, text, email, nothing. Any violation will result in your immediate arrest. Ethan was paralyzed. This is ridiculous. I can't see my own daughters. Your daughters will be speaking with a child psychologist from the court. After that, the judge will decide on supervised visitation. For now, no. In my home, I'm being kicked out of my own home. For now, Mrs. Miller and her daughters will be leaving. There will be a hearing soon to decide who resides in the home during the divorce proceedings. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Divorce? Sarah, you're not going to divorce me. I have the best lawyers in Chicago. I have money. I have connections. You won't get a thing. That's when I stood up. I looked him right in the eye and said, Do you think I'm afraid of you? After 18 years of enduring your screaming, your pushing, your humiliation, you think I'm going to give up now? You underestimated me, Ethan. You thought I was weak. You thought I depended on you. But I have my clinic, I have my own money, I have my evidence, and I have a lawyer who's waiting to see you in court. What lawyer? At that moment, my phone rang. It was Jessica. I put it on speaker. Sarah, is everything okay over there? Her voice echoed in the room. Everything's great, Jessica. The detective just confirmed the protective order. Perfect. I've already prepared the petition for a contested divorce with a request for sole custody of the girls and division of assets. I'm filing it at the Daily Center first thing tomorrow morning. And Sarah, that information you gave me about the embezzlement from the construction company, I've passed it on to the state's attorney's office. They're going to want to have a talk with Ethan very soon. Ethan's face turned red. What embezzlement? What information? I smiled. Those $120,000 you moved from the joint account over the last 6 months, Ethan. Did you think I didn't notice? Did you think I didn't see the statements? You transferred it to your secretary's name and thought I was too stupid to find out, but I did. And I also found out you're using company money to pay the mortgage on your mistress's condo. Amanda, isn't it pretty girl 28 lives in a $600,000 condo in the West Loop that you bought in her name so your wife wouldn't find out? Well, Ethan, I found out. Absolute silence. Even the detective looked impressed. How do you know that? Ethan whispered. Because for the last 8 months I wasn't just recording audio, honey. I hired a private investigator. He followed you. Photographed you coming and going from her apartment. Photographed you having dinner in suburban restaurants where you thought no one would recognize you. He photographed the purchase contract for the condo and found out you're using the company as a front to hide assets. Jessica's voice came through the speaker again. And that Mr. Hayes is called tax fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The partners at Hayes Construction are also going to want to talk to you. I imagine your father will be thrilled to learn you're using the family business to bankroll your affair. Ethan staggered, grabbing the table for support. You planned this. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just collected the pieces. The detective stood up. Mr. Hayes, I suggest you leave now. Mrs. Miller will be leaving with an escort. You have 1 hour to be outside the 500-foot radius around her. If I find out you violated the protective order, you'll be spending the night in a cell. Understood. Ethan looked at me with a hatred so pure I felt the air grow heavy. But beneath the hate was something else. Defeat. He knew he had lost. For the first time in his life, Ethan Hayes was not in control. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. No, I answered. You are. He stormed out, slamming the door. I listened to his footsteps fade down the hall until they were gone completely. And then only then did my legs give out. I collapsed into the chair and started to cry. But it wasn't a cry of sadness. It was relief. It was freedom. It was the weight of 18 years lifting off my body. The detective put a hand on my shoulder. You were very brave. I don't feel brave, I said between sobs. I feel exhausted. Courage isn't the absence of fear, he said. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. You did the right thing, Sarah. For you and for your daughters. I dried my tears, stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of that precinct through the front door, escorted by an officer to my car. As I started the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Ethan was across the street standing by his car watching me. But he didn't move closer, because now he was afraid. Afraid of being arrested, afraid of losing everything, afraid of the woman he tried to destroy, who was now standing tall, ready to fight. I hit the gas and didn't look back. The next 3 days were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and pitying looks. I went with a police escort to get our things from the condo. Ethan wasn't there, but his presence hung in every room like an angry ghost. I packed clothes, toys, documents. Emily helped me in silence. Sophie cried when she had to choose which dolls to bring. We moved into the apartment above my clinic. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, but it was mine. Bought with my mother's money. Ethan had never set foot in it. He thought the place was too simple, said I should rent it out as more office space instead of wasting it. But now that space was our sanctuary. The girls asked a million questions. Where's Dad? Why can't we see him? Are we going back home? I answered carefully, truthfully, in a way they could understand. I told them that Dad and I were getting a divorce, that sometimes adults can't live together anymore, that it wasn't their fault. It was never their fault. Emily, being older, understood more than I wished she did. One night, she came into my room and said, Mom, I always knew Dad was mean to you. I just didn't know what to do. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I held my daughter and cried on her shoulder. You didn't have to defend me, sweetheart. You're a child. It was my job to protect you, and I took too long. But we're safe now. I promise. Jessica worked like a machine. She filed for the divorce, requested sole custody, sought $10,000 a month in child support, and initiated the process of dividing assets. Ethan hired the most expensive law firm in Chicago, 3 of their lawyers against Jessica. She wasn't intimidated. The settlement conference was scheduled for 10 days after I filed the report. I walked into the courthouse, my legs trembling, Jessica by my side, holding a thick binder with all the evidence. Ethan was there in an impeccable gray suit, hair perfectly styled, the posture of a successful businessman. But when he saw me, the mask slipped for a second. I saw the hatred, the humiliation, because everyone there knew, the court staff, the other lawyers, the people waiting on the plastic chairs. Everyone knew that the respected engineer Ethan Hayes was an abuser. Judge Vance entered. A woman in her 60s gray hair in a bun, glasses on the tip of her nose, an unreadable expression. She sat, opened the file, and read in silence for long minutes. The sound of her turning the pages was the only sound in the room. Then she took off her glasses, looked at Ethan and said, "Mr. Hayes, are you aware of the gravity of the accusations against you?" His lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client denies all allegations. This is an attempt at defamation orchestrated by his wife, who is seeking a financial advantage in the divorce." The judge raised an eyebrow. Defamation. With 47 audio recordings, 23 photographs, 6 videos, and a direct threat of murder, not to mention a history of 3 prior dropped complaints. The lawyer hesitated. "Your Honor, those old complaints were dropped because they were without merit. They were dropped because the victims were pressured and paid off," the judge cut in. "I've read the old files. I've read the medical reports. One of the young women nearly died. 2 broken ribs, a concussion. Do you have an explanation for your client's pattern of behavior?" Silence. Ethan fidgeted under the table. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Miller, do you have anything to say?" Jessica nudged me. I stood up slowly. "Your Honor, I lived in fear for 18 years. Fear of disagreeing with him, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of setting him off. I thought if I was a better wife, a better mother, he would stop. But he never stopped. And when I found out he had done this to other women before me, I understood that I was never the problem. He is the problem. And I will not let my daughters grow up thinking this is normal, that a man can hit, humiliate, and threaten, and a woman has to stay quiet." The judge nodded. "Do you have the recordings?" Jessica placed a flash drive on the table. The judge took it, plugged it into her laptop, and played the first audio file. Ethan's voice filled the room. That voice I knew so well, screaming that I was a useless bitch, that without him I was nothing, that he would leave me on the street. I saw his lawyer close his eyes. I saw Ethan sink in his chair. The judge listened for 3 minutes and paused. "Sufficient," she said. "Mrs. Miller, temporary sole custody of the children is granted to you. Mr. Hayes, supervised visitation every other week at the court's family center. Any violation of the protective order will result in your remand. Next, hearing in 30 days to discuss division of assets. You are all dismissed." I stood up, shaking. Jessica hugged me. We walked out of that room, and for the first time in days, I took a deep breath. I had won the first battle. But the war was far from over. 3 days later, I got a call from Jessica, her voice tense. "Sarah, we have a problem. Ethan's parents have hired a criminal defense attorney. They're claiming you fabricated the evidence, that the recordings were edited, that you made it all up to get money from him." My stomach lurched. "Can they do that?" "They can claim it, but we have the forensic analysis on our side. The recordings were analyzed and are authentic, no edits. Plus, we have the medical reports of your injuries and the girl's testimony with the forensic psychologist. They won't be able to overturn this." "And the case with the state's attorney?" "The embezzlement. It's moving slowly, but it's moving. They've opened a formal investigation, seized documents from Hayes Construction. If they confirm the fraud, he'll face charges for embezzlement and money laundering. He could get 2 to 5 years. And the mistress, Amanda, vanished, left Chicago. From what the PI found out, she moved to New York. Probably got scared of being involved in the investigation. So, he lost his mistress too." For the first time in days, Jessica laughed. "He's lost his mistress, he's losing his marriage, and he might lose part of his company. I'd say karma is working overtime." But karma wasn't done yet. A week after the hearing, Ethan's father, Richard Hayes, the founder of the construction company, requested a meeting with me. I didn't want to go. I was terrified of the man who had always looked at me like I was defective merchandise his son had brought home. But Jessica said it was important that I needed to hear what he had to say. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown. He arrived on time, dark suit tie, white hair combed back. He sat across from me without a greeting. "I'll be direct," he said. "I've seen the evidence. I've heard the recordings. My son is a coward and a criminal, and I will not protect him this time." I was silent, stunned. He continued. "When he was reported years ago, I paid the young women to stay quiet. I thought he was young, immature, that he would learn. He didn't learn. He got worse. And now he's dragging the family name, the company name, through the mud. So I'm here to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" "I'm removing him from the partnership at Hayes Construction. His share will go to his brothers. You get the Lincoln Park condo, full ownership of your clinic, and I will deposit $1.5 million in your account as compensation for the years of abuse. In return, you do not sue the construction company for damages, and you don't drag the Hayes name through the media any more than is necessary." I looked at Jessica. She gave me a look that said, This is a good offer. I looked back at Mr. Hayes. And what about him, Ethan? What punishment will he face? He will answer for his crimes. I will not pay for a high-priced criminal defense lawyer for him. He will defend himself. And when the state's investigation is complete, if he is convicted, he will serve his time. Without my interference. And my daughters. I want a guarantee that he will not get joint custody. Only supervised visits until they are adults. Agreed. I will sign a document supporting your request for sole custody. Why are you doing this? I asked. After all, he's your son. Mr. Hayes looked me in the eye, and for the first time I saw something like remorse. Because of my wife, Eleanor. She told you something many years ago the first time you came to our home. She said you were a hard-working girl, remember? I remember. That was a warning. It was her way of telling you not to marry my son. Because she knows. She has always known what he is. And she lived through 35 years of marriage, putting up with a man just like him. I was like him with her. I yelled, I controlled, I humiliated. I never hit her, but I destroyed her all the same. And when I saw the reports against my son years ago, I denied it. I pretended it wasn't true because admitting my son was a monster meant admitting that I was one too. He paused, took a deep breath. But Eleanor told me the other day, after all this came out, that she will no longer live in silence, that if I don't do the right thing now, she will leave me, and she will publicly tell everyone what I did to her for decades. So I am doing this for her, for you, and for your daughters. Because no woman should have to go through what you went through. I was speechless. I accepted the deal. Jessica drafted the terms. Mr. Hayes signed, and 3 days later, $1.5 million appeared in my bank account. The condo was transferred to my name. Ethan was officially expelled from the construction company. And when the news leaked, when everyone in Chicago learned that the engineer Ethan Hayes had been disowned by his own father because of domestic violence, his reputation crumbled. His business partners jumped ship, clients disappeared. The state's attorney's investigation accelerated, and 2 weeks later, Ethan was indicted for embezzlement and money laundering. He tried to call me 7 times, sent texts saying it was my fault that I had destroyed him, that I would pay. Every message was forwarded to the detective, every call documented. He violated the protective order 6 times. On the 7th, he was arrested. He spent 3 days in jail before making bail. But the damage was done. The press got a hold of the story. Engineer from prominent Chicago family arrested for domestic violence and financial crimes. His name became synonymous with shame. And I was standing tall, my head held high, my daughters by my side, my clinic thriving with enough money to start over. Without fear, without shame, without chains. 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of the new condo I'd bought. It wasn't enormous like the one in Lincoln Park, but it was mine, purchased in my name only with my money, with no one to tell me I didn't deserve it. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with a center island where Emily liked to bake cakes on the weekends. Sophie had chosen the color for her bedroom wall lilac. I let her. After so long living in a home where Ethan controlled every decision, letting my 3-year-old choose her own wall color felt revolutionary. I was drinking coffee, watching the sun rise over the city when my phone rang. It was Detective Evans. "Sarah, good morning. Sorry to call so early." "No problem, Detective. Did something happen?" "Yes." The verdict in the criminal case came down yesterday. Ethan was found guilty. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in state prison for embezzlement, money laundering, and intimidation. He'll start serving next month. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. 4.5 years. It wasn't enough for what he'd done, it would never be, but it was something. It was the justice system working. It was the system saying that men like him don't get away with it forever. "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "And there's one more thing. The other 3 women he assaulted, they reached out to me. They saw the case in the news. They want to reopen their old complaints. Now that he's been convicted, they feel safe enough to speak up. So the process might be extended. He could get more time." I felt something warm in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was justice. Finally. They're going to get support. I referred them to a network of pro bono lawyers who specialize in this. They'll have all the support they need. "I can help financially," I said. "If they need it." There was a pause. "Then, you're an incredible woman, Sarah. I'll pass your contact information to the network coordinator. I'm sure they'll appreciate it." I hung up. I sat there, holding the now cold coffee cup, watching the sky turn orange. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt light. Not happy, not yet. Happiness would take time. But light, as if a massive weight had been lifted from my back. Emily appeared on the balcony in her pajamas, hair messy, eyes swollen with sleep. "Morning, Mom." "Who was that?" "The detective. Your father's sentence came through. He's going to prison." She was quiet for a moment, then sat down next to me. "Should I feel bad that I don't feel bad?" I wrapped my arm around her. "No, sweetie. You have every right to feel however you feel. He was your father, but he was also a man who scared you, who made you feel afraid in your own home. There's no right way to feel about that. I just wish he were different," she said quietly. "I wish I had a normal dad." "I know. I wish that too. But we can't change people. We can only choose not to be around those who hurt us." Sophie woke up half an hour later and I told her too. She cried. Unlike Emily, she still held on to the hope that her father would change, that he would go back to being the kind man she had invented in her head, the good dad who never really existed. I let her cry in my lap, stroked her hair, and told her it was okay to miss him, to be confused, to be angry, that feelings weren't wrong, and that she had time to process everything. The girls started therapy. Every Thursday at 4 p.m. I took them to a psychologist who specialized in childhood trauma. They talked about the fear, about the fights they witnessed, about the night they saw their father hurt me, and slowly, session by session, they began to heal. I started therapy too, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. At first I thought I didn't need it, that I was strong, that I was over it. But in the third session, I broke down. I cried for a solid hour talking about things I didn't even know still hurt. The therapist, a woman in her 50s with a soft voice and a steady gaze, told me something I'll never forget. "Sarah, surviving is not the same as healing. You survived. Now you need to heal." And so I began to heal. I learned that the abuse had left marks I couldn't see. I was afraid to make decisions on my own. I was terrified of disagreeing with people. I apologized for things that weren't my fault. I thought I had to be perfect all the time or people would abandon me. I learned that all of this was the result of years of being controlled, humiliated, and diminished. But I also learned that I could unlearn it, that I could rebuild, that I could look in the mirror and recognize the woman looking back. The clinic was thriving. Without the weight of Ethan sabotaging me, telling me I wasn't good enough, I was able to expand. I hired 2 more dentists, renovated the waiting room, invested in new equipment. The patient list grew, the schedule was full, and for the first time I saw the fruits of my labor without anyone else claiming the credit. I used part of the settlement money to create a fund to help women who were victims of domestic violence. I contacted the network of volunteer lawyers the detective had mentioned and offered to provide free dental treatment for women leaving abusive relationships. Because I remembered what it was like to look in the mirror and see a chipped tooth, a broken smile, and feel shame. I remembered how hard it was to smile when you feel broken inside. 15 women came through my clinic in the first 3 months. I listened to their stories, saw the marks on their faces, and everyone that walked out of there with a restored smile felt like a victory. Not just for them, but for me too. Jessica became my best friend. We had lunch together every Friday. She told me about her cases, and I saw that my story was not unique. There were women with worse stories, stories that made me cry in the middle of the restaurant. But there were also stories of victory, women who got out, who rebuilt, who were standing on their own 2 feet. And I realized that being part of this network, this chain of women helping women, was part of my healing. 3 months after the conviction, I was at the clinic when my receptionist called me. "There's a woman here asking to speak with you. She says it's important." It was Jessica Smith, one of the 3 women Ethan had assaulted before me. She was older than me, around 48, with short hair and tired eyes, but there was a firmness in her demeanor. She walked into my office and stood there looking at me. "You're Sarah." "I am. I wanted to thank you for having the courage, because I didn't. When he hit me, I reported him, but then I backed down. I took the money. I pretended it never happened, and I've carried that for 18 years. The guilt, the shame. I got married, had kids, built a life, but I always knew I had let a monster walk free. And when I saw your case in the news, when I saw that you didn't give up, I decided I wasn't going to live with that guilt anymore. I reopened my complaint. And now he's going to answer for what he did to me too." She was crying. I stood up, hugged her, and we cried together. 2 strangers who shared the same nightmare, supporting each other. "It's not your fault," I told her. "You did what you could at the time, and now you're doing what you can now, and that's more than enough." The other 2, Megan and Ashley, also reopened their cases. We arranged to have coffee. We met on a Saturday afternoon. 4 women sitting around a table telling the stories we had kept hidden for years. And it was strange, painful, but also liberating, because we were no longer alone. The trial for the old complaints took place 4 months later. I was a witness. Jessica, Megan, and Ashley testified too. Ethan was there in a prison uniform, his hands cuffed, his eyes empty. He had lost weight, his hair was grayer, his posture stooped. He looked 10 years older. When it was my turn to testify, I looked at him and felt no anger, no fear. I felt pity. Because he had thrown it all away, his family, his money, his respect, his freedom. All for what? To feed a sick ego to wield power over women. And now he was there broken, reaping what he had sown. He was convicted and sentenced to another 3 years for a total of 7.5 years in prison. When we left the courthouse, the 4 of us were arm in arm. And Detective Evans was there too, waiting by the door. He came over to us, shook each of our hands, and said, "You are the bravest women I know." And I believed him. Today, a year after I first walked into that precinct with a bruised arm and a wedding ring on my finger, I wake up without fear. I wake up and make coffee. I wake up and take my daughters to school. I wake up and go to work in a clinic that is mine, built with my own sweat. I wake up knowing I am free. Free from the man who tried to destroy me. Free from the narrative he constructed. Free to be who I always was underneath all that fear. A strong, capable woman, deserving of respect. I won't lie and say everything is perfect. There are bad days. There are nights I wake up from a nightmare where he's screaming at me. There are moments I catch myself apologizing for trivial things, acting as if I need someone's approval. But those moments are becoming rarer. And when they come, I take a deep breath, remember how far I've come, and keep moving forward. The girls are doing well. Emily turned 17 and got into Northwestern to study psychology. She wants to help other people who have been through what she went through. Sophie turned 14 and is in a rock band at her school. She plays the drums. I think it's too loud, but I let her because the noise of her making music is so much better than the suffocating silence we used to live in. And me, I'm starting over. I've learned that starting over isn't about erasing the past. It's about building a new future on top of the ruins. And sometimes the ruins make the strongest foundation. I'm dating again. Nothing serious yet. A kind man I met at a dental conference. He treats me with respect, asks my opinion, listens when I talk. And when I had a panic attack on our second date because he raised his voice to call a waiter, he didn't get angry. He held my hand, apologized, said he understood, and waited for me to calm down. There are good people in the world. I had just forgotten. My story is one of survival, but more than that, it's a story of reclamation. It's about taking back the voice that was silenced, the power that was stolen, and the life that was put on hold. It's a reminder that dignity is non-negotiable, that self-love must come first, and that it is never, ever too late to start again. Remember, you are stronger than you can possibly imagine.